Hello, TEC family. Welcome back. My name is Benita G. I'm the host. You know that. That's why you're here. And season 8, we went international again. We are global. We are asking educators, disruptors, reimaginers to come on, share with us what we're doing, how we're moving into the 22nd century, how we're reimagining everything. What does it look like? What do they think? We're talking about technology. We're talking about books. We are talking about not only just helping educators in the US, but helping educators around the globe. Because don't we always say we want our kids to be international? Don't we always say, oh, we're celebrating kids in America. We want them to be global. But are we really? Because if we're not reaching out to educators across the globe to figure out what they're doing, learning from them, reaching out, connecting with them, then are we really talking about being global, or are we just talking? So today I have somebody on here who doesn't just talk. He is a second guest. So y'all know we do not have to fix a plate for him. He already is gonna come into the kitchen, he's gonna make his own plate, gonna come sit at the table with us, and we're gonna have a discussion. Let me bring him in and add him to the stage right now. Our brother, y'all know him. He is here. He's gonna share some more insight. We're gonna talk about some things he is doing as the I call him the international educator, y'all. You already know. Every time I look up, I'm like, oh, he over there. He over there. Wait, how'd you get there? Put my name on the list. And so we're going to bring him in. He's going to tell us how he is reimagining education. But I definitely want to know about all of the things that I've seen you doing on LinkedIn. And he has a new book coming out. So we're going to talk about that. Now, look, y'all know. He just told me how to pronounce it. And I feel like I'm going to add that extra syllable that I always do. But I'm going to take it out. Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. Did I get it right this time? Oh, my American self is I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Welcome to the show, old time. I'm gonna call you old time because this is your second time on. And come on in and tell us who you are. Reintroduce yourself to the family. We have some new family members. And come on in and tell us about how you're reimagining education.
All right. Well, first off, Benita, it's always good to chat with you. Great to be back on the podcast. And for those who do not know who I am, my name is Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. I've been in the education field for the past 17 years, primarily as a middle years math teacher. Started my career in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, eventually moved to Boston, where I was before moving abroad with my entire family to Ethiopia, and now Sierra Leone, where I'm currently based. Currently, I am the founder and CEO of Identity Talk Consulting. So it's a global consulting firm that focuses on developing primary and secondary level educators into identity affirming and culturally responsive educators. That is the goal. So the main pillars of the work that I do is focus on anti-bias and anti-racist practices. We're going to be focusing on culturally responsive teaching as well as identity affirming education. So those are the three pillars. And as far as how I'm reimagining education, I'm looking at what's going on in our society, and I want all of our schools to be places where, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what country you're from, regardless of what languages you speak, regardless of what religion or faith you practice, whatever identity markers you bring to the table, you're able to come to a space where you're able to be your full authentic self without consequence, without judgment, and you can just be free. So as far as how we get there, by reframing and reshaping the minds of the educators who are currently serving our students. We'll talk a lot more about that when we do get to my book, but that's where I am right now in terms of my professional journey. I'm all about mentoring and coaching educators and getting them to be more in tune with who they are, because we do all the technical training. We all go through the same classes. We all learn about the same psychologists in education. We all take the same licensure test, go through those same loopholes. But how much time do we spend to learn about ourselves and how that shows up in our work? So that's the next challenge that I feel we each need to take on in our personal journeys, particularly as educators.
So How? Yeah, tell me how, because I'm trained to do bias training. I have done several trainings with companies and educators about knowing their bias, acknowledging their bias, and then how does their bias impact them as an educator, as a leader. Um, and so one of the things I want to ask is that how do you even start? Because one of the things I hear from my sister all the time is she's a mental health therapist, and she reminds me all the time. She's like, check on your teachers because teachers are also triggered.
That's right.
And then I say to her, they don't even know that. They don't even know. Like, how do we get that? Or is there a class they need to take? Or should we be incorporated SEL before we I say release them to the field or as they're in the field? Because we know we have so many alternative programs now because we have a teacher shortage where they are coming in now in some states that they're still working on their undergrad degree and they give them a class of students like there's an experiment happening. But anyway, how do we begin to do that work um, with just understanding who I am as a person and then understanding who I am as an educator?
I think for one, we have to acknowledge the fact that we live in a dominant culture that centers individuals who are white, cisgender, heterosexual, Christian, able-bodied, neurotypical. We got to acknowledge that if you fit that mold, you have all the privileges in the world. If you have mismatches within that framework, then those are areas where you are experiencing some form of harm, whether it's discrimination, oppression, or some form of hate. So that's really as simple as it is. So the way I look at it is this. In order for people to start the process, they have to first acknowledge that we live in a white dominant culture. And we also have to acknowledge that within that culture, we hold certain privileges that allow us to access spaces and communities that others aren't able to. And it also informs people's perceptions and views of who we are. So these are things that we have to acknowledge first and foremost. And then once we get to that acknowledgement, now we have to do the self-work. Now we need to dig deep down our own lives and figure out how do we arrive at these ideologies and perceptions that we have of people who do not look like us, who do not practice the same religion as we do, people who didn't grow up in the same communities or neighborhoods as we do. Where do these thoughts come from? Do they come from school? Do they come from our environments where we grew up in? Were there certain messages that we got from our family members, whether they're nuclear or extended, that inform the way that we think about people of different backgrounds and navigate this world that we're in? This is the self-work. This is the personal audit that you have to do on yourself. And as you go through that audit, you will uncover certain truths and certain things that you didn't even realize. You will have some epiphanies in this journey that will make you feel uncomfortable. And then you wonder, well, how do I channel that in a way that's going to help other people who are more marginalized or who don't hold the same privileges as I do? How can I channel this new knowledge and make it actionable within the context of my work as an educator so that my most vulnerable students are able to have a more equitable experience? So how does that work?
Wow. But because I'm sitting here and I'm like, and then when you're saying all of these things, all I can think about is here in the US, when we are pointing these things out, people try to negate your experiences. People try and tell you that's not what that person meant. And I'm like, yes, it is what they meant. Like I know what they meant. How do you not see that? Or they try and flip the entire script and it becomes a why are you trying to make me feel guilty for being white? And so I'm just sitting here like, yeah, how but you do have to do a personal but if you're honest and you're
Mhm.
ready and you want to improve as a person and as a professional, then this should not intimidate you.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because whenever we lead with race, that's what tends to happen, that resistance that you're speaking of. So what I've come to realize over the past couple of years is maybe we shouldn't lead with that. Yes, it's the most obvious identity marker, but what's more important is that people understand how intersectionality works. So yes, when we speak of intersectionality, we are digging a little bit into that critical race theory, which people hate to talk about, particularly my right wing and conservative people out there. Yes, there is a critical race theory bend that is there. And you do need to delve into Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's work,
Yes.
because she is the godmother
Yep.
when it comes to it. And all it is we are taking time to understand how the intersecting parts of who we are play a role in how we have to navigate society, and also play a role in how people view us from the outside. And also, it lets us know what privileges we hold, which then translate to the power dynamics that we find ourselves in different situations, as well as our positionality within certain structures we're within. So if I know that I am Black, but I'm also cisgender heterosexual, let's take the cisgender heterosexual part, forget the Black part. We know how that shows up from a discrimination standpoint.
Correct.
But if we're talking cisgender and heterosexual, now, okay, I'm a male. That's one thing. Right there, I got a privilege right there over anybody who is a woman. Now I'm cisgender heterosexual, which means that I'm straight. And a lot of policies and procedures within our schools are cis heteronormative, meaning that they favor people who are straight people,
Correct.
who identify as such. So if I am queer, gay, trans, if I'm within that LGBTQIA plus community, that's a disadvantage that I have. That's an area where I may be experiencing some hate, some harm. I may not be able to access certain spaces because I can't come out as who I want to be. So I stay in the closet as a form of protection. Because sometimes, depending on where you are, with whether it's within the United States or the UK, wherever you are in the world, there are places where you could be criminalized for being that.
Yes.
You can go to jail. You could be killed. So that is a real thing. Now, mind you, I'm a Black man. Yes, I've been racially profiled. I've dealt with racism. I've dealt with colorism as a kid. I've dealt with all those things. But I also know that I have certain privileges as well.
Correct.
So that's just that part. And then on top of that, I'm neurodiverse. I had an IEP growing up. First 4 or 5 grades I was in school, I was in a self-contained special education classroom with students who had Asperger's, students who had ADHD, students who were autistic. I was in the same room as they were. And as a result of that, I dealt with ableism. I dealt with people calling me the R word. I dealt with people teasing me for being in that class. People teasing me for being in the short van instead of the big yellow bus. I dealt with that for the first 4 or 5 grades. And it was something that I internalized. It hardened me because then I had to prove myself not only to my peers, but even to my own father, who would engage in ableist actions. So these are just some examples in my personal life. But if you take each person and you were to have a conversation around what that dominant culture is, the characteristics, and you align them with who you are and how that informs how people view you in society and the way that you move in different spaces, I honestly believe that it would lead to some very important dialogue about identity. And it will also serve as an entry point for people who may not be comfortable talking about these issues, because then you can say, listen, I'm somebody who also has privileges too. It's not all bad for me.
Right.
So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, look at this brother right here. Look at this black man complaining about being black in America or being black in the world. Like, no, like, let's have a conversation that's a bit more nuanced than that, where you
Yeah.
can then share your experiences. I can share my experiences, be vulnerable, and let them know that, hey, I am a learner too. Even as a facilitator, I am also a learner, and my knowledge base is continuing to grow because I'm talking to people from these different communities who hold these different backgrounds, who have those first person experiences that I don't have. So it just leads to a more open conversation, which then invites more people to come in and be vulnerable and be more willing to do the work that we're asking them to do.
Because the work you're asking requires a level of vulnerability. It
It
requires
does.
it requires me. And I was thinking, and I was like, for a moment, I was like, I ain't got no problems. Like, I'm good. But you said something, and I was like, because I'll never forget. I was at Hampton University, and they were building a building, and I had to walk, past this construction site. And my class was like, now we're on a time where it gets darker early. So my class, when I was coming back, even though they would be wrapping up for the day because it was getting ready to be dark. For this particular day, I don't know, some of my friends are with me because I normally would walk to class by myself because I had a later class. And a group of my friends are with me. We were in college. I don't remember what year. It had to be like sophomore. So it had to be like sophomore, junior year because I was like coming from this part of campus. And I remember I crossed the street, like they're doing a construction site, and the correct way would have been like to walk, past the construction site on the side of the street. But I would get to the point and I would cross the street. And they kept on walking and they were like, why did you like what you doing? Like what you doing over there? Like, why are you doing that? And I was like, I didn't have a response. And I was like, and so we kept walking and kept walking. And then my girl from New York, New Jersey, I'll never forget, we got to where we were going and she stopped and she said, you crossed the street because they were white men. And I said, what? She said, you crossed the street because every one of those were white men. And I was like, what are you talking about? So when she said it, I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say.
Subconscious.
Why would I do that? And, we get to wherever we're going. And of course, I'm in class thinking about what she said. I don't know what the class is about. I don't know what the professor said. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like processing, like, is that what I did?
Wow.
And we're coming back. And so she came out of her class, I came out of my class. And I said, so we were walking back, we got to dinner. We were eating dinner at the table. And I said, God, I was crossing the street because it was nothing but white men. And I said, oh my God, I need to unpack that. And so we're sitting there. Here, this is how you know you have good friends. Because like now we turn into these, we were already nerdy kids because that's where it's college. We're these nerdy kids and we're unpacking my issue of bias as a Black Southern woman, understanding that there is a fear, underlying fear that I have been raised in and understood to believe of a group of white men. That I did not have a fear if it was a group of Black men. There was no fear in me. Because in my head, I'm like, they're my protectors. But
That's right.
this group of white men, I'm from the South. No, we're gonna go on this side of the road. We're gonna go over here. We're gonna get away from them. But if my friend had never said that, or they had never walked with me, I would just be like, dude, like no big thing. And so that her being who she is, because that's type of friends, we just say it. But I was like, when you said it, that brought back that whole conversation, that whole feeling of that bias, that vulnerability. And then how did that impact me being a teacher? Because I felt like I was always hard on my Black boys. And not hard like I'm writing you up. I was hard like you need to get this. You got this. Like what you doing? Like
Mhm.
I'm getting in your behind. And they would be like, why are you so rough on us? Like,
Right.
but I would have to like calm down. And I would have to be like, you gotta give them space, you gotta let them fail. You have to allow them to make these mistakes. It's okay because they're in the safety of your classroom. But I would always be like, come on. And they were like, you need to relax. You got it. And so I love that. So, okay, let's talk about, we're going to switch it for a minute because I want to talk
Okay.
about the book. I wanted to lead into the book because that's where all of this comes from.
That's right.
I want TEC family, we're going to give you the information. We're going to pre-order the book. We do not have any free books for you. This is the business. Okay. And he's given us all of the things that he has learned as a master educator, as a professional educator. And we are going to take this, purchase the book, and we're going to lead PLCs. We're going to invite him to come in and lead our PLCs. We're going to Zoom him in. We're going to invite him in to do our PDs throughout the school year because, we can't do one PD. That's like so
Oh
1900.
no, how would this work?
So 1900s, okay? So we're going to do 4 to 5 PDs so we can get an understanding. We don't want to rip band-aids off and then you got your teachers walking around wounded and nothing has healed. So they're not better. We're going to go in, be vulnerable, learn, grow. So we have better professionals, but we also have just better human beings. That's most important. And so tell us about the book, give us some information, and how do we pre-order?
Sure. So as far as the book, so the name of the book is Learn to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom. This is a book that took 3 years to write. Started this journey in 2021, and it was at the height of the anti-racist movement. We're talking post George Floyd, where there was a lot of conversation around DEI. You had everybody, white folks, black folks, Latinx folks, everybody was into having these conversations about anti-racism. What does that look like in our schools? What does that look like in our workplaces? What does that look like within our homes? So there's a lot of momentum there. And there were a lot of great books that came out during that 2020, 2021 period, even before that. But there was something that I felt was missing. Even with all those great books, I just thought to myself, there has to be an anti-racist book that covers not just Black people's experiences, Indigenous people's experiences, but one that just covers everybody. Like, where's that book that touches on the specific issues that Indigenous students deal with within K to 12 schools through the lens of identity? Asian American Pacific Islander students, Black students, Latinx students, LGBTQ plus students, students who are neurodiverse, students who have disabilities. How do they navigate the spaces? So I wanted to create a book that would serve as a primer for those historically marginalized communities, because usually to learn about one of them, usually get a book that talks solely about that community. So how do we bring all those together? So as I was putting the book together, I knew that with my podcast, Identity Talk Educators Live, I'd been interviewing people who are from different communities, different backgrounds, and they were teaching me things that I just didn't know. And I felt like with every recording, every episode I was doing, every interview, I was having epiphanies. I didn't know that's what it's like to be a person who is indigenous and what settler colonialism is. I didn't realize that there are certain parts of the community that are dealing with this form of hate and the severity of it. Like, and that was kind of what I was thinking about with every single person, every single community that I was learning about. And I said, I got to put this together, because when I think about learning to relearn, it's about building capacity. It's about reframing our minds. It's about being vulnerable, being transparent, being willing to apologize and acknowledge when we have imposed harm on another human. It's all those things. It's about what can I do as a teacher to create a space of belonging where every student, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what languages they speak, is able to come into that space and feel welcome and feel seen and feel heard and feel honored and feel affirmed. That is the vision that I had for Learning to Relearn. And so, in order for me to do that, I had to interview different people across those communities I mentioned earlier that had those first person experiences so that we can really understand the diversity within each of those historically marginalized communities, because we also know that none of those communities are monolithic.
Mm.
There's going to be diversity in thought, there's going to be diversity in culture, diversity in language, diversity in even religion and faith within those communities. So I really wanted it to be a very expansive look at what identity is and how intersectionality works within the context of K-12 education. So this is a book that obviously is targeting K-12 educators, but I highly encourage school leaders and administrators to pick up a copy of the book, because some of our school leaders need to do this work. And whether they realize it or not, they are imposing harm on their faculty members and then consequently their students. So this is a book for them as well. This is a book that can be used at the university level as we speak. I have a few friends in academia, a few professors who have reached out to me to say, hey, I would love to have this book as part of my syllabus for this intro to education course that I'm doing. So I want to get multiple copies from my university, because we need to rethink how we're training our pre-service teachers. Are we training them in a way that allows them to have that anti-bias and anti-racist lens? Are we incorporating those kind of courses or that kind of knowledge into our programs? And do we have professors, whether they're adjunct professors or tenured professors, who have the capacity and the capability to deliver instruction within those type of courses, so that we have more culturally responsive, more identity affirming educators coming into our school systems, more of those educators coming into the pipeline? It has to start within those programs. So we can get them early. Now we're bringing people in who know what it means to be in a multicultural setting, who knows what it means to translanguage within their classroom when they have students with different linguistic backgrounds. They know what it means to be a social emotional learner, because guess what? They're factoring in how culture, how language, how curriculum, how policy impacts the way students feel when they're in these spaces, and how that can sometimes trigger behaviors that are undesirable.
Yes.
And by triggering certain behaviors, you're triggering trauma. So this is all encompassing. All the things that we talk about in schools, we talk about UDL. If you're about UDL, if you're about differentiation, if you are about RTI, all these favorite acronyms that we use, then guess what? You should be somebody that is committed to learning to relearn.
Yes.
If you're someone who believes that you're an advocate for young people, whether you are a community advocate, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a parent, whether you are a youth director for a local rec center, Learn to Relearn is a book for you. Let's take it even further. Let's go at a macro level, shall we? If you are somebody who is working within an NGO, a non-governmental organization, you run a nonprofit that focuses on child protection and safeguarding, particularly at the international school level, because we focus on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. And some of those goals do focus on safeguarding and child protection. Identity-based harm is a violation of those rights. So if you are someone that has a DEI statement on your website, but at the same time, you don't recognize the intersection between child protection, safeguarding, and DEI, then guess what? You got to learn to relearn, which means you got to get my book so you can do the work in a way that is justifiable do it in a way that is doing this work justice. So I can go on, but those are just some of the things that come to mind when we think about learning to relearn. It's a mantra that we need to practice.
Yes.
It's a reminder that we are forever going to be perpetual learners. We are always going to continue to learn and build capacity. There's no ceiling.
No ceiling.
There's really no finish line. This is forever work. This is a marathon, y'all. If you think you're going to reach a point of proficiency where you can consider yourself a master, then you're tripping. You are absolutely tripping. That's not how this work goes. You are going to continue to surprise yourself. You're going to continue to be humbled. You're going to continue to defer to people who know a little bit more than you and have been doing this work a little bit more, much more longer than you have. You're going to do that because that's what this work warrants. That's what it entails.
I love it. No, okay, so how do we pre-order the book? Because now we're all going to get it. And I want to say this before you tell us that. Those of us who live in states where we know we are being suppressed with DEI and books, acknowledging all of the students in our class from wherever they are, from LGBTQIA plus community. This is when we have to get together in our small groups and we have to do our own professional development. Because our classrooms are still our classrooms. And I know for those of us who, like I learned yesterday, a reformist and a revolutionary, but that's a different story. Those of us who are revolutionary, we don't care. We're gonna do right by our kids anyway. We're gonna do right by our students anyway. We're gonna do right by our parents. And so you are going to also pre-order the book. And I'll go ahead and say, if you reach out to me, like, Benita, we have this book. We don't know what to do with it. We need somebody to lead us. I'll get in there. I'm going to invite the author to come in. We can do 5 or 6 sessions together on Zoom, get through the book. So through the school year, going into next school year, when we come, whatever we need to do, be better prepared. That's what we need to do because I am in a state also where, I just be looking at them making decisions and go, that's so cute. So what we're going to do over here is continue to be that safe space for our students. And I'm in the middle school sector, so I tell my students, I was like, look, some things I can do, some things I can't do because you're not 18, but this is what I can do. And they accept that. I'm going to acknowledge you. I'm going to acknowledge these things. But then there's some things legally I can't accept, but let's have a conversation about it. Because that also opens up the conversation of this is why it's important to vote. Like it takes us everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like it's not, right. I love, yes, the presidential race is important, but do you vote up and down the ballot? Do you and your parents see who's the DA, police commissioner, school board, people like? And so it leads into a bigger conversation, which is what we want because we want educated citizens. We want educated citizens. And so those of us teachers, we are going to listen. We're going to order administrators, all of my friends. Hey, my assistant principals, my deans, my department chairs, my academic interventionists, you too, my principals, my superintendents of zone A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, all of you, even my tech people, because the technology gap also has something to do with race and biases. Oh, yeah. And so we're going to all get this book and we are all going to learn to relearn. And those of you who've been following me on Instagram, you know this is my year of unlearning because I'm in a different position. I'm working in a micro school. I'm working in a private school sector. And there are some things that I have had to unlearn. My kids go to the bathroom when they want to. They just say, Miss Benita, I'm going to the bathroom. I'm like, okay. And the reason they say that is a safety thing, just in case something happens. I know they went to the bathroom. That's it. There's no, this is not the time. Okay, thank you for letting me know. All right. And sometimes I just do like this because we're in the middle of working. Let's go. Just go. And so tell us how we can pre-order, and then we're going to move on. We have a couple more sections. That was so good. Oh my God, that was so good. Okay. All right. So the easiest place to go is relearn.com. So that is the official landing website for the book. Over there, as soon as you get on, you'll see the book cover there and a description of what it is.
You also see around that cover a link that says order your copy today. Click on it, it'll take you right to Amazon. So that's where you should go. And you'll also learn about the different chapters of the book. You'll also have access to free accompanying resources. And honestly, that's basically the appetizer. That website's the appetizer until the book comes in November. So it's printing as we speak, and I'm excited for it to finally be released to the world. And I hope y'all get yourself a copy and do y'all thing with that.
I love it. Okay, it's at the bottom of the screen. Did I do it correctly?
Learning.
Wait,
The end of this.
Had it again. Look, this is why you hire other people to help you, y'all. LEARNING.
There you go. And then the rest was
We're gonna leave it up. We're gonna leave it up for a moment.
So there you go. Learningtorelearn.com. There it is, y'all. Simple as that. Head to the website, share with your friends. Make sure your friends share with your friends' friends and their friends' friends.
Just buy them a copy. Just buy it.
Give a copy. Buy them a copy. There you go.
Just buy it and gift it to them. Y'all know.
Yes.
All right, so that is going to stay up. I want to go into where we were in July of this year. And I always start with, there's no like one way to describe it. There's so many different ways. And many of us are still processing it. I am. And even though we're like in the fall, I'm still processing what happened to me this summer. But we were at ASCD Ghana 2024, Educational Summit, Reimagining Education. A lot of us, because we already are working in reimagining and disrupting education. This is why we went to this conference. One of the things they were like, what were you expecting? I had no clue. I had no preconceived anything except for I knew I was going to be in the motherland. And I knew that people had already gone, especially Black Americans had already gone to any country in Africa had already said to me, you're just going to feel it. Like you would feel it. They're like, the air would feel different. The water would taste different. Like you would just feel it in your bones and in your spirit. And they couldn't describe what it was. But once we landed, we felt it. Like as soon as we got outside the airport, the air we felt it. So for me, before I even got to work, before I even got to the conference, we felt it, picking up our luggage. We felt it waiting for the shuttle. As you came into ASCD Ghana, tell us what you felt, tell us what you did, what sessions you had, and then how are you making it, as we learned from the conference, not just a moment, but how are you allowing it to continue your movement? Because you already had a movement. That's how we were there.
It's a lot because, as I mentioned to you, you were at my workshop, so you know about my story. I'm a first generation Ghanaian American. So my mom and dad were born and raised in Ghana. When they graduated from high school, they both moved to the States where they started a new life. And that's where I was born, as well as my siblings. So I grew up in the States. I didn't grow up in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get the chance to learn my home language like my mom and dad did. We grew up speaking English just like everybody else did in the States. So there's that part. And then, of course, you go into school, your name is different from everybody else's. You're darker than everybody else. So you're dealing with the colorism, you're getting all the Africa jokes. You're dealing with all kinds of ridicule. And you, as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, is trying to figure out how to process it and move forward so you can be in school every day. So the more you hear those negative messages, you start to internalize what people are saying. So then this happens to me in 1995. I just finished my 6th grade year. Summertime is happening in June. And my parents sit me down and tell me, you're going to be moving to Ghana. You and your little sister are going to be moving to Ghana. And you'll be living there for 3 years. And at the time, I was devastated because I had a life in the States. Growing up in Bloomfield, Connecticut, shout out to Bloomfield, I had friends.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing home run derbies every single summer. We were playing basketball at the courts. We were riding our bikes all over the neighborhood, playing video games. That was our summer. And I had friends who I grew up with. So the thought of leaving all that behind was very scary for me as a 12-year-old. But what I didn't realize was how transformative that experience would be for me. It will be a turning point for me because I get to Ghana, I go to school in Ghana. I'm with Ghanaians. I'm looking like everybody else. Definitely not sounding like everybody else, but you felt more at home
Mm-hmm.
because you're around your people. And also, my classmates embraced me. I still talk to them to this day. Like when I went to Ghana, I bumped into my classmates from 25 years ago.
Wow.
And we just connected, we bonded, and it was just a beautiful thing. I went to my alma mater, which is not too far from where the conference was being held. And I was able to connect with a couple of my old teachers who are still teaching there. Well, it's different for me because when you when you grow up outside of your parents' home country, you're always trying to find ways to fit in, validation. Yeah, I didn't grow up in the country, but I still feel like that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my blood. I'm Ghanaian. I eat the food. I love the culture. I respect it. I embrace it. I internalize it. You would think that would be enough, but that's not enough for certain people. And as a result, there was a number of years where I didn't even want to go back to Ghana
Hmm.
because of the criticism and the ridicule, not from classmates or even family members. It was more so like other people. So I have this story. So I'm flying from Sierra Leone. Now, mind you, I got my US passport. We're flying to Kotoka International Airport. We're going to Accra. We land there. I get off the plane with my luggage. I got my passport in hand. Get to the immigration booth. I hand over my passport to the officer. The officer opens it up. Well, first off, they see the US seal
Mm-hmm.
on the cover. They open it up to the bio page. They scan it. They look at my name, clearly a Ghanaian name, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. They look at me, and then it's like, no, we are Ghanaian. So you're a Ghanaian, right? Start to speak Tree to me.
Okay.
So they speaking Tree to me. And of course, I'm speaking Tree back. But they're like, now I didn't out bruffle. Like, why are you speaking English to me? Right? And it's
Oh,
like, well, that's kind of like my default. So
right.
for me, I'm trying to connect. I'm speaking Tree too, and it's like, you're Tree. You sound like a white man. Yeah, oh yeah, like you sound like a white man. How is it that you have this name and you can't speak your own language, and then they start to criticize you? And part of it is generational. But it's like, listen, I didn't ask to be born in the States. And it's not even the case where I'm even throwing my parents under the bus
No.
because they did what was right. They did what they felt was right. They had us at a time where, as immigrants in the United States, the mindset was we need to make sure that our children can
Mm-hmm.
speak English so that they don't deal with the same discrimination that we dealt with. They
Yes.
had a
And
hard
that's
time,
that's
child.
real.
They had a hard time navigating certain spaces because of the fact that they had that status.
Right.
Even though they spoke fluent English, they were highly educated, and they were even more competent in their jobs compared to some other folks. So that was something that I always thought about. But going back to that moment where I'm at the booth, I'm like, see, this is why that's the trauma. This is why like I have a hard time coming back because of that reason. So now you fast forward to the conference, which I was excited about. I
Yeah.
said, man, this is a full circle moment. I went to school in Accra.
Mm.
I took a lot of the same tests these teachers were taking as kids. I know what it's like to get my, I can't curse on here, right?
You can.
All right. Well, I'm not going to because,
Okay.
I got here. They don't know what it's like to get your butt whooped with a
Mm-hmm.
cane by teachers. Every teacher has that going on, right? That's why I experienced what a lot of kids growing up experience. I knew what the inequities were in the system. So for me to have an opportunity to come back to Ghana as an educator from the States, as somebody who knows the system in and out,
Mm-hmm.
it was an opportunity to give back. It was an opportunity to connect. It was something that I needed personally. So that was something that I knew. All right. Yeah, this is my son. Say hi. Say hi.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, so daddy's doing a recording right now. That's my oldest son right
Yeah.
there.
Being being a son. I love that.
Yes. But yeah, so it was something that I felt was an opportunity for me to connect. And it was a bridging of my two worlds,
Yes.
Ghanaian world and the American world. So here's how it felt. So you were at my workshop.
Yes.
You felt the energy in that space. It's about 20 of us there. I think it was you, and it was another sister. Y'all were the only two Americans in that space. Everybody else was Ghanaian.
Everybody else.
This was the first time in all my years of presenting and facilitating workshops, and I've been to many conferences. This is the first time where I was actually able to speak my home language in my own workshop. It felt like home. I felt like I was at home. It was the
It,
most comfortable I was in.
it was so I will say this and I'm gonna let you finish. It was
Yeah, go
truly
ahead.
it was truly amazing to be the minority in this setting, which is so
Mhm.
funny to me. When I was able to lean over, and then I think the table realized, oh, she's American, and they were like, he's saying da 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 da, and I was like, oh, okay, okay, because I only know like two words, and they were like, no, and then when you said merging, it was so seamless, but it was also necessary because we were sitting in the room and you would say something about America, we'd be like, yeah, you're right. And then you would say something about being in the education system in Ghana, and then they would go, uh huh. And then we were sitting there like, what? And then they would explain it to us, and we would go, and then we were able to explain some things sitting at our table, and they were like, hmm. And at the end of the day, what we realized is that we have to work together. We have to work together because I learned so much. Sometimes you're like, I'm the presenter, blah, blah, blah. And as a presenter, sometimes when I give it out to them, they give me, you give it to go back and forth. I learned so much about the education system, but also I was reminding them we are literally sometimes on the same path, depending on what part of America you go to. Like it's not what you think. What you see on the media is one section of American education. They don't show you that there are 15 different sections. I'm from rural Virginia, it looks different than DC.
That's right.
California looks different than Miami. And so
That's right.
once they started understanding that, your session was amazing. Go ahead and wrap. We're gonna wrap this up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that happens, and after everybody leaves, I sat in that classroom for almost 2 hours, just taking it all in, and I had to shed some tears. Like it was that deep. It was that heavy for me because all I've wanted all this time was to be in a space where I felt like I belonged, where I was accepted, I was validated, and there was no judgment. Like, no, like you are our brother. And I felt that for 90 minutes. That's what I felt. The same feeling that I had in those 90 minutes is the same feeling that I wish I had when I got off the plane and I was giving my passport to that immigration officer. That's all I've ever asked for, right? I
Right.
recognize that growing up in the States, I have certain privileges. I recognize that there's always going to be a stigma attached to that.
This game is called this or that. So what we do with this is I shout out what it is, And then you tell me whether you is this or that, and just gives us another way to get to know you. And some of it is about work, some of it is about your personal life, not too personal because we on a podcast, but we'll go. So, and if it's in between, that's okay because educators, we know everything is not black and white. There are gray areas.
That's right.
And so if it's both, you can just say that, and we'll keep it moving. All right, here's the first one: traditional classrooms or virtual learning environments.
Virtual learning environments.
Okay. In-person workshops or online webinars.
In person. The energy is there. Like, I need the energy of the people that you can't always get online.
All right. Individual projects or collaborative group work.
Collaborative group work.
All right. Do you like ebooks or real books?
I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today. Definitely real books. I need something tangible.
Smell it and turn it and highlight it. Let's see. Standardized testing or project-based assessments?
Come on now. Project-based assessments.
Look, I love it. Technology-driven instruction or hands-on learning?
You need both. You need both. If there was one that we need more than the other, I'd probably say technology-driven instruction 55, hands-on learning 45, only because that's the trend we are going down right now. There it is. I agree with that. Flexible scheduling or a fixed timetable? I'm going to say flexible scheduling. Okay. All right. So should we have creative arts integration or STEM focused learning? I mean, let's just do STEAM. Yes, and I think I need to adjust this one because STEAM is now out, and I am loving it. I'm loving all of it. Just merge the two together. You need both. And yes. All right, last two. Are you a morning person or a night owl? I would say I'm more of a morning person. Got it. And the last one, audiobooks or a podcast? Definitely a podcast. And while we're doing this, please shout out your podcast again. Sure. It is Identity Talk for Educators Live. You can find that on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find it. Check it out. Yeah, I love it. And I you put a clip on LinkedIn, which I love it when you do that. And then I could go listen to it. And the last one was amazing. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to do our last part where we do a wrap up. In this one, we do a call to action, and we want you to share your information so we can contact you. We know how to order your book, but share it again. Where are you on social media, and how do we hire you to come in and teach the PLCs? All right. My parting words will be stay true to the teacher in you, which is the model of Identity Talk Consulting. If we stay true to our principles, stay true to our morals, stay true to our gut as educators, and do what is right for our students, we cannot go wrong. We'll be able to sleep at night knowing that we did what was right for students, even if it meant putting our career in jeopardy, which is not something that I want to have people do. But sometimes dire measures call for dire actions. So that's a word. Now, as far as how you can connect with me, you can go to the main website, which is identitytalk4educators.com. Over there, you'll find out everything about me from the podcast. All my social media handles are there. And then all of my services. So in terms of services, I do keynotes, I do virtual workshops, in-person workshops, and we customize them to fit the needs of your school community. So if you are a school district or organization that's looking to get some professional development around the areas of culture-sponsored teaching, anti-racist practices, then have Identity Talk come to your school and we can have a conversation about all that. I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, TEC family, you know him. He's already family with us. Thank you so much for taking time out. You know, I'm always going to say thank you to your family for allowing you to come on and taking time out from their day. I am so appreciative. I'm always going to call you my brother because you just go above and beyond when we call on you.
You're like, I got it. What you need? How can I help? And so as a family member, the same thing goes for me. What you need? I got it. How can we help? Ladies and gentlemen, go subscribe to the podcast, pre-order the book. Those are your call to actions for me. Don't be a stranger, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we went over. It's like an hour.